couple of things today, so I appreciate you being here. It's the title of this is supposed to be rigging for all types of species and so forth. And I will tell you, I'm not overly strong in the crappie area, but hopefully you guys can hear for crappie badges before. So the predominant thing for me is going to be bass fishing. I will be happy to answer. I've done catfishing before. My dad grew up catfishing. You asked me a question, how long have I been fishing? I grew up fishing, so I've been fishing the majority of my life, but I didn't really get into competitive bass fishing until around 2000, and then I joined a local club. You know, my dad was one of those, he did commercial fishing when that was the thing to do. He worked for a steel plant. And the steel plant he worked for, it seemed like 6 months out of the year they were on strike. So one of the ways in which he was able to make money for us to get so far to Phoenix was to commercial fish. So he would catch the fish, he would go sell them in the various communities, but we always just loved fishing. We always went out to the lakes and things. We always, as kids, were told, you leave in the morning, be back by dinner, stay out of trouble, go dig up worms, go catch grasshoppers, crickets, and fish. But I got the bug after I went on a guided trip to really go and start looking at bass fishing itself. And just so happened, the gentleman I went on a guide trip, I had coached his daughters when I was teaching and coaching in East Texas, and I was right there in the middle of Lake Fork and Lake Bobasano and Monticello and all those, but I really didn't have any desire to fish at that time. And so when I went on that guide trip with him, I got the bug. And so I started out with just a little bitty boat that you could get 2 people in. When you pull the crank on the motor, it better not stand behind me or sit behind me because I'm going to pop you in the face. Moved from there to a fishing ski boat. Then was like, that's not working, and then went to a bass boat. My plan was when the Bassmasters came to and started the women's bass tour that we were going to go through, and I was going to go on the pro side the first year. Just like a lot of folks didn't have a clue what I was really doing, but if you don't jump in and start somewhere, you're not going to have it. Coming back from a tournament on Lake Caddo with the local club, had an unfortunate incident on March 17, 2005, and on April 11th, had that back surgery. Totaled my truck, totaled my boat, didn't do much for me. So by the time the doctor released me, the first WBT tournament had already taken place on Lake Louisville, and I couldn't have been ready anyway. So I finally did get to fish a couple of tournaments later as a co-angler, flew out to North Carolina, and as soon as I could, I got another boat, got myself healthy, and went to the pro side. Was able to fish the Women's Bassmaster Tour for a couple of years when they dismantled that. A friend of mine from Kentucky, Secret Work, yes, her name was Secret, that's her given name. We started working out some items, and we started the Women's Tour, Lady Bass Angling Association. So we are getting ready to start our 9th season. And so I've been fortunate enough to win our classic 2 different times. There are only 2 of us that won it more than once. Pam Martin Wells, who fished was one of 2 women that qualified to fish the Bassmaster Classic. And myself were the 2 anglers who won the Classic more than one time. You know, I can talk about fishing of that nature all the time. Predominantly those forums that talk about today are the different things that you can do and the different types of things you can set up. You've got the different kinds of reels. Of course, you've got, you know, we're looking at these as the kids' reels behind us, but you've got these Zebco, you've got the adult versions, and those are great if you're going, I don't want to mess with line twist, I don't want to mess with a lot of the things that go on when you've got a spinning rod or you've got a bait caster. Because they have their own evils. A spinning rod, if I'm doing this, I'm going to be setting this up. If I've got a lightweight item, if I want to take, you know, a fluke of some kind, and I want to skip it up under a dock, then this is going to be my option because I've got a lot of whip that I can do in case I don't take out the wall. I've got a lot of whipping action I can do, and I can get it low, and I can skip it under there. And the line comes off easy, and I don't have to worry about a backlash. What I do want to be careful of is as I pull this line, and I get it on my finger, and I make my cast, when I get ready to finish it up and start, I want to flip the bail manually. These reels are notorious for having an extra line twist to it. So when I put my line on mine, I will be at my boat storage area. And I'm going to go through, after I spool it on, I'm going to take, open the bail up, and I'm going to run all three post storage and pull the line off. And I'm going to run it back between two towels with nothing tied on the end. Because I'm doing this, got a little pressure on it. I might put a small amount of weight on it. Doesn't have to be a lot, a couple of pounds. Something to give it a little pressure so that twist is pushed out the other end. So that when I get on the water, that is one less thing that I have to deal with. I will also, when I'm fishing this type of rig, I'll use a swivel, sometimes up the line above my bait. And that swivel allows the line to untwist. It does change the action of the bait. So you have to think about that as a piece on it. But I use this for a drop shot. So you've got these little bitty worms here. I'll have a weight on the bottom of the line, and I'll have one of these small hooks. Probably, depending on the type of water I'm fishing, what the fish want, it could be anywhere from this far above my weight to this far above my weight. It's typically a vertical fishing piece, so your electronics are a big help on that. But there are times when the wind is going to just fight you no matter what. Around bridge pilots, it's a great thing to do around bridge pilots. So that's one. And if I'm doing something where if I'm saying I am crappie fishing or I'm fishing for bluegill, it's a great little thing because it gives a lot of fight. What you do need to be mindful of is what kind of modules or what weight do you want your rod? I like ones with a little bit more backbone. And the only difference between the way in which they make the rod length, if they set the rod up with this rod and this one, is they'll put these rods on a bending machine. And it'll have a natural, as they begin to bend it, it'll have a natural flex one direction. A spinning rod is going to be in that flex, and a bait casting rod is going to be on the outside of that flex. Maybe backwards to that. But they put the eyes just on one side or the other of that bend. And that is the only difference. This one's going to be on the inside of the bend. And then the bait casting is going to be on the outside of the bend, so it'll be a little bit more feeling and strength to it. If you're looking at the bait casters, I brought several of the ones that I use here. On the bait casters, people are terrified of these because they're going, I'm going to get backlashes. And I even get backlashes in the case, but there are a couple of things that I've learned to do. One, you do some of the settings here where I can change the settings on this side, and on this particular one, I've got two different types of settings. And I've got this little knob. Most people will crank this down so tight that your caster goes here to maybe that table over there. You're like, I'm not getting any distance. This sucks. But you kind of crank it down way too much. You do have to have a little bit of spool to go with it. Your thumb is going to be the key to it. Even when I make a long cast, my thumb is right there. If I look like I'm fixing to go into a tree or get into a mess, I can put my thumb on there and that's my brakes. I can stop it in mid-air if I need to, without having to yank it back. Because if I yank it back, I better hope I've got my sunglasses or something on my face because I'm probably going to have an interface. And so as you're doing it, it's just a matter of pressing the thumb pressure. Another little trick when you're casting these rods, flip your wrist over like this. I have no idea why, but whenever you cast and you flip your wrist over, I don't know if it changes the angle. Yeah.
Or sideways.
So if I'm casting here, when I finish, I roll my wrist over so the back of my hand is up. First few times you do it, it's going to totally mess your cast up. Or you'll cast and then go, whoops. But I found that whenever if I'm not tired and if I'm paying attention, or if I start to think, why am I getting these overruns? Then I'll start paying attention that I'm not rolling my wrist. Now, is it because I'm paying attention to rolling my wrist and I take a little bit of pressure off the cast? I don't know. I just know that for me, that is something that when I start seeing those backlashes occur, that's something that I concentrate on. Because when I'm going to these tournaments, yeah, I'm casting, I'm doing my cast, but at the end of it, I'm going to roll it over. And that reduces those for me. So, several things I've got up here to talk to you guys about as far as I talked about the drop shot a little bit. As far as the braided lines and stuff. This frog right here, when I won my first championship. I was so frustrated in practice. A friend of mine from Arkansas was my practice partner, and we were going through, we were chugging along, and we found an area where we were getting bit like crazy. I bet in practice I got 5 fish in 5 days to the boat. There's so much hydrilla there. It's just, you'll be going along and it's just, all you can see is grass. Because it's a river system, and so those are all shallow areas, don't get into it. But I found some areas where there was a lot of grass. I was getting bit like crazy. And finally, I told Vicki, I said, I am not going to set this on the top water. You're working the bait on the top water, and when you feel the weight of the fish, you set the hook, it wasn't working. And so I said, Vicki, I'm not going to quit working this bait until that fish takes it and it goes out the other end. And I caught the next fish. Those fish had to hold on to it longer. In 3 days, I had over 40 pounds of fish. And the closest competitor to me was 12 pounds behind. Because I found an area where I had probably 5 different spots that I could rotate through that were less than a mile apart. And I rotated. But I did use brake. And I used a carbon light rod that was heavy, because the carbon light rods have a very fast tip, so I could get a long cast. And I had to cast in these areas where they're short. I had to cast behind the grass and bring the bait in. So my co-owners were struggling because they couldn't get those casts in. One, they were going, how can that be? And then they were doing like I did in practice. They were missing it. They were, even though they could feel the weight, they were waiting. They were saying it's too early for these fish. And I say for these fish because that's not typical. Typically, when you are working the top water and you feel the weight, as soon as you feel the weight, you set the hook. For these, it had to be to the point where I could not work it anymore. I then went, at the end of the time, my arms were killing me. I went to a paddle, this one happens to just be a Senko type bait, but I had to move to a paddle tail bait, but my arm was so tired. The only way I could catch fish was on that frog. I knew that on the final day that I had enough lead that if when I caught my first fish, knowing who was behind me, that if I could catch one, they had to catch 2. When I caught my second one, that meant they had to catch 3. When I caught my third one, I knew they had to catch 4. When I got my fourth one, I knew it was lights out, unless they caught a monster. So I literally, on my frog rod, my arm hurt so bad that I would cast out and I turned it over and was popping it with my right hand and reeling with my left because my arm hurt so bad. Think about 9 days in a row of this being your motion. And I was exhausted. Another thing too, since I picked up the Carolina rig rod, is what do you do on a Carolina rig? When are the applications? Spring is a great time to Carolina rig. Those fish are out on those points. They're in the staging areas. And so when you get on some of those drop-offs, going into those bedding areas, I can throw a Carolina rig, whether it's this one being a ½ ounce or a lighter one, and I can catch a lot of different fish. So think about your rigs and think about the time of the year in which you're fishing. Summertime, Carolina rig over humps and things on the main lake over the points is another great one. As far as the length of the leader, in this particular case, I've got a pretty long leader on this one. But I've seen people with leaders that are almost twice as long. This is pretty typical for me. It's about 1.5 to 2 feet. And I do that because it's a launching cast. It's not a normal cast. It's like you're throwing something over the top so that I don't wear my arm out. If you're tying this, the best way to do it is when you're first originally tying before you go out, tie your swivel on. Well, actually, I can tie my line on, and then I tie my swivel here. It gives me a chance to do the knot that I like, Palomar or original Palomar. Once I get out on the water and if I break off, I have to retie. It's a little more challenging, so I have to use, like vertical knots where I run the line through and I twist it and then I run it back through. It's just really hard to put everything through there like you would on a Palomar not to do it. One of the biggest fish I ever caught was a Lake Ray Roberts, 6.5 pound fish there, was on a Carolina rig. I I thought I was hung. I'm dragging along, and it's like, I was hung up a bunch, and I'm like, I'm hung again, and I pulled, and I'm like, wait, no, it shot up out of the air, and the people in the boat with me said, oh, you lost it. I'm like, no, it's still on. Went back over where that fish had jumped, and it spit out a 13-inch bass. So it wanted my bait. Another thing, if it's a moving bait, whether it's a chatterbait, a spinnerbait, and guys, they've got a great deal on the spinnerbaits that are right behind you right now. I think it's a limit of 15. These are $1.99. They're normally $6.97. So look at that. So with the different ones, I've got this one. It's a willow blade. If I've got dirty water, stained water, and I want to move a lot, that willow blade. Think about putting your hand through the water. If I take my hand sideways through the water, I'm going to move a lot of water. If I turn it sideways, I don't move as much. When it's dirty water, you want to move the water, that's why I'm going to use that. You can also use a combination of two of those, or you can do a combination of a willow and a Colorado blade. And so that will give you a different look. You've got a little bit of movement, but you've also got a little bit of imitation of bait fish. And you can get these blades in a lot of different sizes. This one happens to be a double willow. And so again, it's going to imitate more of the pattern of multiple bait fish following along something. You can get them where the blades are two different colors. So this one happens to have a gold and a silver. You kind of have to play with it a little bit, the different skirts. So this one has a little bit of blue in it. I might take a white baby brush hog and make it a trailer on a spinnerbait. Cut the head off, stick it on there, gives it a little bit of a tail that floats through the water with a little bit of body. I can go through and I can take a little paddle bait and put on the end of it. Something that's going to make it move a little bit. I don't want to distract the spinnerbait, but I want to think about those pieces. As far as the rod I'm going to use for that, I like a medium heavy rod. Almost always I use fluorocarbon. Now, fluorocarbon is not cheap, so I cheat. If you take all the line off of this, it'll go about halfway in there, and halfway down, you will see that I have put a half a spool of this on. I've taken electrical tape, covered it up, and then I've tied on my fluorocarbon. How many of you can cast 200 yards? Kevin Van Dam can't cast 200 yards. But Kevin Van Dam gets his stuff free. So, because fluorocarbon is expensive and it's also not sometimes very friendly with knots, I'll take and put about a half spool of inexpensive line, because this runs me about $8. This little bitty spool right here is $12. This is 1,600 yards. This is 200 yards. I can't afford that. So I will put that on. Now what that does is it keeps my backlash, if I get a really bad one, it keeps it from going down into this because I put that tape barrier on it. I basically made another spool so that now when I retie, let's face it, guys, I only need about 75 yards of line. So that means that on one of those big spools of this, which is $100, I can make it go through 20 rods. So then it becomes economical for me to do it. If I were retying every rod and I got 8 rods or 10 rods out of it, I'm broke before I get started. On the braid, I'm probably going to go with about a 12-pound braid. And I've tried Cabela's. I've looked at it a little bit. I've used it a lot. It's one of the ones I'm looking at. This one happens to be one of the ones again that's on the clearance. They've got a couple others over there. I've used the fins. I've used this one's called Pro X line. And so I like the fins a lot. It's just not what you can get here. So I'm going to but it can. So using a heavier braid in that case, when I use braid sprayed on my spinning rods, I will go down at about my last 20 feet to the fluorocarbon or mono. And part of the reason for that is I don't want that knot being right near the end. I want a little bit of speed on my line when it comes out. It also gives me a chance to cut off as I'm retying and not have to tie that, do that medical knot in the middle. I can get pretty tight, but sometimes it's coming out of the tip of these. It doesn't take much for it to catch up on. So I try to get it as tight as possible. So, especially if I'm using a swim bait. A swim bait, I love to use a swim bait on braid on this. A lady at my regular job wanted me to take the shoot home and fishing, so we went to Lake Fork. And so we're going along. We've caught quite a few fish, but nothing she could brag about. And then Mariette goes, "Cheryl, I'm home." And I'm watching the rod tip, and I said, "Yeah, but it's not what you think you're home on." And it was a 6-pound bass. Because she was doing a swim bait through that grass and just reeling it along. And, so there are sometimes you get lucky and this fish doesn't have to be very smart. You just have to get it in the right spot. And that's the case. I love crankbait. I could live and die on crankbait if they would let me. Thought I had a crankbait out here. Yes. Oh, here we go. This is the crankbait that I won the second championship on. It was on Old River Lake in Tennessee. It was one of those tournaments where I got lucky because the fight was super tough. There was this one pocket that I went into, and there were so many bait fish, the water was black. It was the only pocket I could compete in, but I'm competing against literally millions of bait fish. And I fished this series of weeks, and the fish have been popping up in this one deep area around this corner, and I'm like, surely I could get a lucky bite off of one of them at some point. And I happened to look around behind me, and I thought, wait, that looks different. Cast over, caught big bass in the tournament. Just because I happened to look over my shoulder and see something different. The bait fish were moving differently than everything else. And it was the big fish was pushing around. And it was drudgery. I think I only won that tournament by about a pound. And I had 7 fish in 3 days. That's how tough the night was. But on the last day, I figured out some of the marker patterns for this shallow creek that I was in. And those concrete on the bottom, as things would come through the river system and wash through the creeks, brush would get caught up. And I fished those long enough in a circle, I could get at least one off of each of those poles. And I found 3 of those poles that last day. So, it's a little square bill worked perfectly. But you like soft plastics, and I fish a lot of soft plastics, but my favorite, you can give me a crankbait or a jig, those are my 2 favorites. You take a jig, you pick your favorites. This one happens to be a 3/8 ounce, actually says 1 ounce. It's a little bit big for what I typically do. That one happens to be an enticer football jig. I will use a football jig, but I'll also use a swim jig for some of my lighter jigs. Because that's part of the evil of braid. It just happens. Because it's so thin and it's such a strong line, it has 0 give. So it's going to slide in between itself. So the other thing to watch for on braid is when you cast. When you cast out, watch your eyelet here. Because this thing as it rolls back and forth across, pulling your line for you. If I cast out and my eyelet's over here and my line's over here, I'm going to have a backlash. Well, the next few casts. Because what I'm doing is I'm laying a loop over the line. It's crossing itself when I start reeling it in. And so, even if you watch Kevin Van Dam, they'll cast and you'll see them pull 1 or 2. And all they're doing is they're getting their line either a small little loop or they're getting that line where it's not crossing. I want my line when I start to reel, if the type of application permits, I want it lined up with that piece that goes back and forth across the reel. I don't have to worry about that with the spinning reel so much. But with the bait caster you do, because when you start to reel, the eyelet and the line are on opposite sides of the spool. When you reel in, it's going to jump right back across, and it's going to have a crossing pattern. And it might not get you the first time, might not get you the second time, but sometime or other it's going to come back and it's going to just, all of a sudden it's going to jerk in the middle of the cast, and that spool is going to double in speed. And then you have this big mess. So when you do catch a big one, that would be the recommendation. And you know, invariably, you catch that big one at the end of the longest cast you've had all day long. And so it's really very good as far as that is. The thing also that helps me a little bit with saving that is because I have just a half a spool that's got that the electrical tape covering that, it can only go down so far. So I only have a small amount of line versus 200 yards or 220 yards to connect. Well, you know, everybody has their preferences. So I thought a lot about today because I had a question about, well, which one do you recommend? You have to get out and play with it. Because I can tell you something that works for me. I can have each one of you take me up to your favorite fishing hole where you catch fish all the time, and I might or might not be able to catch fish. And vice versa. I can go to a place where I catch fish every single time, take you there, give you exactly what I'm fishing with, but you might not catch it. Because we don't necessarily work the bait the same. And sometimes it's a matter of how you work the bait. And I've had people with almost zero experience fishing that I can help out catching the guy in the front of the boat with me on a trip. And he's getting all frustrated, and the person in the back is kind of like, I caught another one. I got another one. Well, part of it, they might be dragging it back, or they don't know how to work it, so they're not overworking it. We're so busy going, oh, I got to make it work. I got to make it work. Or I got to make that shaky head really dance. Well, sometimes all they want is that little twitch and let it sit. You forget that there's also current. Even in our lakes and reservoirs here, there's a little bit of water current moving around. And all that impacts it. You can have fish swimming in the area, you're going to create a little bit of current. And that's going to make that bait wiggle a little bit. Think about the reel that you're getting. When you think about like a 6-2 or 7-2 reel, that means for every turn of the handle, it's moving your line that far. You get some of the ones that are now 10-1. One turn of the handle, my line is moving that far. They're still 10-1 now. They got a couple now that are coming out 10-1. Pretty much for every application I do, I can take this. Things disappear up here, and I can put this crankbait on. It's a medium heavy, but because of the tip on this, I can use this with my crankbaits. A lot of folks will tell you, no, you gotta have a special crankbait rod. I can't afford a special rod for every application. How many of you can? And if you think about the speed and the tip on these rods, if I go all the way to the end, look how much bend I've got. If I don't try to force that fish, I don't want to go all the way to the end. I really don't want to buy a new rod. Shouldn't break it, but I don't want to test it. If I'm not trying to force that fish, I can take this rod and reel and use it with my crankbait. I typically, on most of my applications, will use 10 to 12 pound fluorocarbon. Even on lake fork. I get more bites because the line is not as visible. I can feel more bites. People will say, well, what about the open handle here? You can feel more when you can touch that blank with your fingers. And guys, you are more prone to doing this than the ladies. I will see guys who will grip the whole thing in their hands. I can't do it. My hands aren't big enough. But they'll be up here holding this reel like this because they want this finger right here. Well, what am I touching? I want to be feeling it here. I also don't set my drag rates on it. And people are going, why not? Because my thumb is my guide. I can take right here and pull that out. I can do that. Most everything I can do that. Because my thumb, if I go to set the hook, the first place my thumb goes is right there. When I set the hook. That's something I figured out for me that works. Does it work for you? Again, guys, your hands typically are bigger than the ladies. You think about the weight of the rod and reel. I've got some of the old Shimano Curados green. That's people, plastic. They're good. I've got 15 of them. They are so heavy though, that when I go out and I'm practicing for tournaments, I actually have them on some of my jig rods because they are so durable. But when you think about casting, if I'm practicing for a tournament, I might cast 600, 700, 800 times in a day, if not more. I do that on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. The tournament starts on Friday. Think about how many casts. So even if we make it a round number, 500 or 1,000. 1,000 times 5 days, you're going to get tired. You need a rod and reel that you can find the balance for. This one's going to be a little heavy towards this end. So finding the center point is not always what it used to be. I also have a bait on here. So you need to try to find your balance on them without any weights on them, without any line on them, so that you know the actual what it is. But you want one that you can take. If I put 2 fingers here, I can get close, but I'm not going to get exact. But for me, I can't get to the balance point of this in front of my back. But when I start moving up, notice that as I get right in here where the bait's at, like with that being hooked, I'm getting closer to that balance. So it's up a little bit compared to what some folks do. You start getting the balance way out here, that's a really heavy rod. But when I have the old Curado on here, that has to be way back here. But I don't use that for a long cast. So think about how you want to balance. Even the spinning rods need to be balanced as close as you're going to be able to put your hands out. As I move forward, look how much more to do that just from that much movement. That balance makes a difference in how hard it is for you to cast. When I'm doing a spinning rod cast, that's it. So if you've got shoulder problems, or your shoulders are sore, the spinning rod's a good one to do. I use 2 hands whenever I cast these rods. That's my cast. That still allows me, if I want to need to roll my wrist, it still allows me to do it. Because once I get here, I can let go. I don't know how many brands have it, but this particular one is a Bass Pro Carbon Light. One of the things I like is I can dial in my line break. That's 12-pound fork on my rod. This one is 17 pounds. This one is 14. You guys can pass those around for them to see. They have that nice little dialing system in the bottom. How many times have you been out there going, I don't know what line's on this rod. I don't know what pound weight is. But I can turn that little knob, and now I know what line weight's on there.